Oh,
What
you're Jason Lee, FamLee Life today.
that's right.
FamLee Life. Jason, what would you say is your life philosophy right now?
My life philosophy is, I'm stealing it from someone a lot smarter, is to ruthlessly eliminate hurry from my life.
Ruthlessly eliminate hurry.
Yeah.
Is there some kind of event or experience that led you to this philosophy?
Yeah. I mean, um, high burnout, working in, I'm a pastor, so just a lot of care, a lot of meetings, a lot of emails, and then I have a family, so caring for my wife and caring for my kids also adds on the plate. And then are you familiar with the Enneagram at all? Have you heard of Enneagram?
A little bit. Yeah.
Okay. So my Enneagram type is a 1, which is the perfectionist. And so I see the world in things that are not right, and I have a strong desire to correct it. And a lot of those things are out of my control, but there is an illusion that I do have the control. So I get in my mind a lot. I have a lot of internal narratives that are very unproductive and unhealthy. I think, my biggest narrative is not good enough. I'm not good enough. That's not good enough. She's not good enough. We're all not good enough. And let's try to get to perfection instead of being okay with our flaws or being okay with the journey of progressing. And so I think that can compound with all the other things outside of my life, work, life, marriage, parenting, and then on top of all my internal stuff that's happening, it's very overwhelming. And this whole philosophy is all about, it's sprouted from a question that was asked to a USC philosophy professor. And the question was, what is the number one enemy of spiritual life? And the philosopher, his name is Dallas Willard, he said, hurry. Hurry is the number one enemy to spiritual life. Because you have never, and as you think about it, like, I have never met a loving person who was in a hurry. Like, hurry is the antithesis of love. And so if I want to become a person of love, then I have to be someone who is not hurried. And hurry looks very different for so many people. We both live in Taipei right now. So when we're going to like the Da'an district, right, like everyone's busy, they're on their way. And then, I feel like everyone's in a hurry when they're driving. Like all Taiwanese, like hospitality is nowhere in sight, right? And it just becomes chaos, and it becomes very Darwinian. And it's just it's a good metaphor of how my life can be, where I'm just so intent on going from point A to point B. If you're in my way, then get out of my way. I'm going to cut you off because I'm more important than you. All these things. So yeah, I want to be someone who embodies love, and in order to do that, I have to ruthlessly eliminate hurry from my life. So that's where it came from.
Love it. Do you experience external pressure that tempts you to hurry up, whether from your parents, family, financially, or otherwise? And how do you navigate that?
I think every external thing, whatever pressure is from the external thing, is always filtered through my internal narratives. And so I have the control, I have the power to either give power to the external controls or external variables out there, or I cannot give them power. And depending on where I'm at with my mental health, that it just fluctuates. So yeah, of course there's expectations from my parents. Luckily, like, my wife is so gracious and so loving and so like for me that she doesn't put a lot of expectations on me. And the expectations that she does have on me are very healthy. She's like, I want you to love me well. Like, that's a great expectation. I want you to love our children well. That's a great expectation. I'm willing to rise up to those expectations, right? But from my parents, I think it comes to like, yeah, I mean, there's always this like, I'm never good enough for them. It can seem that way. And I think a lot of Taiwanese people can resonate. I think a lot of people can resonate with parental relationships. And yeah, when I was working at a church in Los Angeles, there were these really unhealthy expectations from my boss. And I learned through therapy many years later, I just gave way too much power to him, and I shouldn't have. And I just lacked the wisdom and the tools to know that I don't have to give power to people who I respect or who is my boss or people who I look up to. And that took a lot of time to do. Financial is also another one. I think the financial burdens that I have are not always realistic. And that's an internal narrative, once again, of going down deeper to my motives. Like, why is it that I'm not content with what I have? Why is it that I think that if I have a little bit more money, that I will be more satisfied, even though I know that is just it's a fallacy, because no money can be ever fulfilling us to our fullest, right? So, but yeah, I mean, part of that external expectation is I oversee all of our finances as a family. So there is an extra burden and responsibility of like, I need to steward this money well because of the support from my parents. Also, like, with paycheck, with the salary back in the US, and like, but also we want to live, we want to explore, we want to provide our children with the best experiences that we can, and so yeah, it's a continuing journey. I've never been mentored in how to steward money, so it's just a lot of personal learning and kind of trial and error. But yeah, going back to like checking my motivations, I think that's the most important.
Do you have any tools or practices or experiences that have helped to ease that story that you're not good enough?
I'm very grateful for therapy. When I turned like 33, 35, I wrote, I didn't write a letter to myself, but I wrote 10 things that I wish I told myself when I was in my early 20s. And the number one thing I said was, go to therapy is not a waste of money. Because I didn't start therapy until I was like in my mid 30s. And if there's one thing I could have changed, it would have been going to therapy. So yeah, I would say, like, I don't know if it's a practice per se, but it's definitely something that I've embedded in my life and really prioritized, was to go to therapy and to do the really hard work. And so that I think that's one. The second one was I needed to find a cohort of other men who I can trust fully with all of my crap, and to know that what I share with them when I practice authenticity and vulnerability, that they would honor it, and that they would champion me towards health. And so that was a very long journey as well. That started probably started like 7 years ago, 8 years ago. So like I'm 37 now. So when I was like 29 or 30, which is in my opinion way too late. I wish I had a strong group of friends much earlier in my life. But I'm grateful for who I have now. And so, going through the challenges in our lives can be so isolating. And then with the rise of social media, with the rise of just digital information and all those things, like it could just be even more isolating, because social media gives us the illusion that we're connected to people, when in reality, we're not even close to being connected. So yeah, therapy, community. And then one of the spiritual practices that I really love is something called silence and solitude, which is really I haven't really done it here in Taiwan. I just moved in October, but when I was living in Dallas, Texas, I would just take a whole day and just be off grid. And Texas is very big, but it has a lot of wilderness. I love to go fishing. One of my hobbies outside of pickleball is bass fishing. I only fish for bass. I don't care for any other fish, because there's such an art to it, and I love it. And so I would just go for the whole day, wake up at like 4 a.m., drive to a lake and fish all day, and come back by 10 p.m. And that's my way to just completely remove myself from everyone and to not feel needed, because my life is full of meeting people's needs, whether it's my family or other people, is very healthy. So now living in Taiwan, I'm trying to figure that out. I don't know how to discover that right now, but it's something that my wife actually kind of forced me to do, and I'm so grateful for her to really encourage me to do it. So yeah, those are my 3 top things that I do.
So, therapy, a community,
And silence and solitude.
Good ones. Where do you stand on your faith now?
That's a really good question. This is the first time in 13 years that I'm not practicing pastoral ministry. So for the last 13 years, I've been a pastor in 2 different churches. And so that was so much part of my identity. That was so much part of my purpose. And so me coming to Taiwan has been a sabbatical to kind of rest, recalibrate. And it's been interesting, because my family and I, we've been visiting different churches, and there's always an impulse of me of like, again, just talking about my Enneagram 1 of like, okay, there's a lot of things that can be improved, but then also like my experiences, and also just my desire I just love helping people. And the restraint that I have to give to myself of like, dude, just chill, just sit down and shut your mouth and just receive and rest, which is really hard. It's really hard. It's kind of like maybe I know you coach basketball, but like just a sports thing would probably be like if someone was injured and have to be benched, and you just watch the game and your team, you love your team and they're losing or they're doing okay, and you're like, I just want to get back in here. It's like, okay, I'll just play with my bummed ankle, my bummed knee, whatever it is. Like, let me just get in there. But you know that if the coach lets you go and play, there's a higher risk of getting hurt, even more. And then you're going to be out of the game much longer. And so for me, that's how I feel. Of like, okay, this is time for me to rest and heal, recuperate, dream again, reconnect with my family, experience a whole new culture, a whole new lifestyle moving here. But then I go and I'm like, man, I just kind of miss I don't know if I miss the grind, but I miss the ministry aspect of my life. So where do I stand faithful in my faith right now is I have to trust in the process and trust that God is still working in and through me, even though it's not as obvious in a public leadership setting. And then through this time, God has also revealed a lot of like things that I need to work through. And I've known about them. Like, for example, I can be a very angry person. I'm not an explosive anger. I'm a very internal anger. And how that expresses itself is a lot of passive aggression. I'm very wound up, and I don't become a person of love. I don't become a safe person. And so intimacy with my family is severed because of my internal frustration. And so God has really revealed, was like, dude, like, you gotta work through this. So before, if I'm working, I can distract myself from being very task oriented. But now that I don't have a job, I'm stuck with it, and which is a good thing, because now I can really wrestle with it. I can be confronted by the ugliness. In the Christian circle, we talk about our sins or our flesh, just these impulses that we have that are not loving, and to be confronted with it, and then learn how to make sense of it, learn how to wrestle with it, and find areas of where I need to accept things, find things I need to grieve about things, and find things that I need to release. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's just like, it's been a really awesome journey. My faith has continued to grow stronger, and I'm still discovering this side of faith that is a lot more quiet, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest opportunities for improvement that you see from your time in kind of churches and institutionalized religion, let's say, or institutionalized Christianity?
The more I'm away from it, the more I grieve about it, in the sense of how much institutionalized Christianity is more of a deterrent for people. It's not attractive for those who are seeking and hungry for connection to God. I think so much of why people are so hesitant to investigate the person of Jesus is because of just some of the gross things that institutionalized Christianity portrays. And I grieve over that. It's really sad. And because that's not who Jesus is. He's not someone who pushes people away. He's not someone who intimidates people. His love is alluring, and his love is so gentle, and so yeah, there's so the improvement that I'm working through is really weeding out between what is kind of icky and gross about that the skeptics are looking in and be like, yeah, that's the reason why I don't want to come to your church, or that's the reason why I can't fully accept Christian teachings. And there's so much that I can do, but what I want to do, and what my wife and I want to do, is live a life in a way where people see us and be like, wow, they really love Jesus. And we want to know more. So yeah, that's kind of what we're working on together, what I'm working on.
Okay. Is there a mistake, quote unquote mistake, that you've made that you feel most ashamed about?
There's so many.
Start with one.
I think going back to anger. I think going back to anger because it just goes against everything that of who I want to be. I can't love people well when I'm angry. I can't love my wife well when I'm angry. And so I don't know if it's a mistake more than like it's just a part of of who I am, of my imperfection that I'm very well aware of, and still needing to grow in. So that, yeah, I mean, that's one of them. Yeah, it's interesting. So when you mean mistake, like it's not the same thing. Like, what do you mean by, because you put that in air quotes. So why don't you flesh that out a little bit more?
Yeah, so the reason I put mistakes in air quotes is because you could take the perspective that there's no such thing as a mistake. There's only opportunities for learning, and maybe you made a suboptimal decision, let's say, but if you learn from it and you grew through it, then in a sense it might not necessarily be a mistake. Or yeah. It's kind of a theory also with regards to regret, because to regret is kind of to put an expectation, as opposed to just accepting, maybe forgiving yourself, and being present to whatever is your current life situation. It's usually when you regret, it's because you wish your life was you made some different decision, because then you hope that your life is different somehow. And so it's kind of it's not accepting the present. And so I guess if you were fully quote unquote enlightened, you would not have any regrets or consider anything to be a mistake. Yeah. It's just what happened, and you learned and you grow, and it is what it is in a sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think when how we're talking about this is more of like life decisions, because like a mistake that I made yesterday is I turned right instead of turning left. But that's not a big deal, right? You're talking about like bigger life decisions.
Yeah.
No, I think that's interesting. I think what you're leaning towards is more of like, hey, like you're highlighting the difference between a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. Growth mindset is always like, okay, I messed up, or hey, the decision I made was a bad decision. It was a mistake. How can I grow from this moment? Versus a fixed mindset was like, oh, you spiral inwards of like, man, I really messed up. I'm so dumb. All these like really negative, like I'll never improve, or I'm never going to get this right, and all that stuff. And so yeah, I think how people view regrets and mistakes, you could determine someone of having a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And obviously growth mindset is something that you have to cultivate, but it's a lot healthier to have that mindset. But you said something that was really interesting that we should riff on this. The whole idea of regrets, because I hear this more and more of like, I don't want to live a life full of regret. And I'm curious because I think you talked about this with Charles too, and I think a little bit with Krillin of like the decisions we make in life. It almost seems like we are more afraid of making choices because we are afraid of regret. And I don't know. I feel like, doesn't that inhibit people? Does it, if my main fear is regretting and I have choices in front of me, for me, I feel like because I don't want to regret a decision, I'm not going to make any decision. It's almost like I'm paralyzed with the choices I have in front of me because I don't know if I make this decision, am I going to regret it? Am I going to make this decision or am I going to regret it? And that, at least for me, like that's just like super scary and frustrating because then I'm stuck and feeling stuck. I don't know. I just sense that like a lot of people are there. So what's your observation? Like what's your thought on that?
Yeah, as you mentioned that, I'm thinking that when I say regret, it's kind of similar to betraying your higher self. So
Okay,
when you
expand more about that.
If you can imagine that there's your highest self, like your most divine path that you can live, and from that ideal of who you could be and what you could be doing, there's all the other lesser possibilities. And so being afraid of regret is being afraid to betray that highest self. And I guess it usually comes out more when it's a more significant moral decision, or bigger decision, like do I take this job because it's secure and or do I follow what I believe is my calling, even though there's less security in it? Or do I tell the truth because I feel or know that it's the right thing to do, even though I could have consequences? Or do I kind of lie or avoid responsibility or whatever? So it's usually in those kinds of decisions where maybe this decision point comes out. It's probably not every day of like, what should I eat? Which one am I gonna eat?
Right. Yeah.
So all of that can be in terms of like veganism and eating meat and all that. But in terms of just, my point was just
okay. So that makes sense in that like you're talking about do my actions align with you say my higher self, which I interpret it as like, is it aligning with my character?
Yeah.
My character formation. Okay.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I don't know. I just think about like high school students needing to choose a college, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, do I go to this college? Do I go to this college? But I really don't want to go to college. I just want to go to work. But then my parents are telling me, no, you have to go to college. So then they're stuck of like, like, am I going to regret doing this? And I don't know. I think there's like I think the fear of failure is so strong in so many people. And so I'm kind of linking the fear of failure and the fear of regret kind of together in our decision making in whatever life decisions that we make.
Yeah.
And just was just curious about like how have you navigated it and just your thought process of like even the people who you've interviewed or even the students who you coach and stuff, like do you think that fear of failure is strong and real? And let's just riff on that for a second.
Fear of failure. I don't know. I don't really feel it that strongly. think it's more a fear of disappointing those you care about or letting them down. At least that's how I feel it. Because I don't feel like there's no failure if you keep going. And it's a lesson in not having too many expectations. It's just trusting the process or trusting the timing as opposed to trying to force it.
I think you're a very exceptional case then, because I don't think that's how a lot of young people feel. I think there's a very high sense of the fear of failure. So I because I think of like, okay, so going back to the States, like if I think about like Western culture of like fear of failure can look at so many ways of like I study really hard, I try to get into this college and I don't get it. It's called failure, right? Or I dress a certain way, I work through all the social nuances of friendships and relationships and stuff, and my boyfriend or girlfriend breaks up with me. It's a failure, and I make fun of it. Like almost every decision that young people are making is based off of like the fear of failure. At least that's how I sense in the States. I think here in Taiwan, I think the fear of disappointing people is very high, especially like parents, right? But I think I don't know, that might still, like, what's the difference between disappointing a parent, the feeling of disappointing a parent versus the fear of failing their expectations?
I guess it's pretty similar, because what I wanted to ask too was deconstructing this notion of failure and what that means to an individual. Is it not meeting your own expectations? Is it not meeting the expectations of those you care about? I guess.
Or is it just not being perfect?
Is it not being perfect? Yeah, but what does it mean to be perfect? Mm-hmm. Is that an expectation? But I think it comes down to expectations a lot when you talk about failure. Because you can finish last, but if your definition of success was like, I was really scared to do this and I put myself out there and that was courageous of me. Like, it wasn't about winning first place. Like, you had a personal definition of what it meant to succeed, then you might not win the race, but you don't feel like a failure. Whereas if you expected or had the goal of coming in first and you came in second, you might feel like a failure. So.
And then to complicate that is like, okay, let's say your goal was to finish the race. That was what you wanted to do. So you came in dead last, but you finished the race.
Yeah.
You felt good about it, but your parents didn't.
Right.
Right. Then what? Then how did or your friends didn't, your peers, that was not their expectations. Or you told your friends, hey, I just want to finish the race, and they don't care. They're like, what? You finished the race, but you were last, dude. Like, can't be that. You can't be that. The gaslight your experience in a sense, mm-hmm. Right? And I think that's where all these like compounding, like it kind of branches out to like all these scenarios that I think young people can play out to the point where like, I'm not going to run. I'm just not going to do that, actually. Because the other side too is adopting the Western mindset is, okay, I don't care what other people think. I value my own goal. I'm just going to do me. And I think on one side, I think that's what separates West versus East in terms of culture. And that comes with a lot of pros and cons. But I think one of the dangers of really adopting, like, I'm just going to do me, I'm going to follow my heart. I'm going to set my own expectations with, and if people don't like it, then whatever. Is that it can be very isolating. And we are not meant to be isolated people. We're not meant to live isolated. And I think because of such a rise in depression and anxiety, at least in the West, is because of this mentality of I'm just going to do me. You only live once. I'm going to follow, and I don't give a rip about what others think about me, and they're just going to do it. And I grieve over that because I see them do that, and they're so lonely because they're not inviting trusted people to come in to be on their corner. They don't know how to, because there's a sense of vulnerability there, and there's that practice of vulnerability and authenticity and really trusting people. I feel like is such a lost gift. So, anyways, yeah. What are your thoughts? What are you hearing from this?
What I'm hearing is that I agree the idea that the illusion, or that people say I don't care what people think. I don't know that that's true. Like we all care what people think. We all exist in relation. We're social creatures. And so that's kind of the ego's attempt to block that out. And it's, it's trying to get you to do what you feel is right for you. But I don't think it's ultimately true that we can't not need people. And so I do see how that can be very isolating. I think ultimately the relationship, like with God, let's say, has to come first. And I think this is where therapy or therapeutic practices or ideas help, because you realize that a lot of times the people who put expectations on you, whether they're projecting or they're hurt themselves and they had some kind of experience, when they were growing up, or, when our parents were growing up, that makes them feel that they have to control, or that they cannot love you unconditionally because they didn't receive that. And yeah, I guess it does take maturity. I'm not saying I can do this. The person who triggers me the most still is my mom, and I'm working to overcome that. But it's because we have such a tight bond that she is able to affect me, or I allow myself to be affected so much by her expectations and her judgments. Whereas for a lot of other people, like I don't, it doesn't affect me as much. Can't say I don't care, but yeah.
It goes back to what I said in the beginning of how much power do we give to people and what they say to us. And in fact, are you familiar with Brene Brown's work?
About courage and vulnerability?
Yes. Yeah. So,
and shame.
One thing that I really appreciated was the 1 inch square exercise. So basically, she said, okay, get a piece of paper or get a flashcard, cut it in half so it's a square, and then you fold it up multiple times, like 3 times, to the point where there's like a very small square and then a medium square and then the rest of the note card. And she's like, okay, right in the down in the center, the smallest square, the people who you value the most in terms of who you trust the most. It's like it should only be enough room for, the people who you put in there should be enough room for that one small square. And then it's like, okay, so for example, for me, like there's only 3 people in that small square. One of them is my wife. And then the second square is like, okay, who are the people who you look up to and respect, but you look up and respect put those down, and then do it again where it's like, what's the next level? So the outside level is like, people who you look up to and you're able to glean wisdom from them, right? But you don't fully want to expose everything about yourself. And then you go down to your second one. It's like, okay, you can open up a little bit about it, but when it comes to the small square, it's like you've given them permission to speak into your life and to call out your BS. And that when they do, you listen. You're like, okay, you have my best interest at heart, and I will submit myself to your warning or to your. But you don't do that to anyone else. So those three people, my parents are not in it. They're also not in the square in general. They're not even in the second or third tier. So that has helped me a lot with dealing with rejection or dealing with people's perspective on me, or even people's, good intentions of trying to give me advice or whatever it is. I like cycle through. It's like, you're not in my square, so I don't. Thanks, but no thanks. So, anyways, yeah.
So good exercise.
Yeah, it's game changer. Game changer.
What I'm hearing, what from what I heard earlier was, it seems like you have a calling to help young men, like off to college around that age.
Yeah, I mean, before I was when I was first a pastor, I started a young professionals group, so those in their 20s and 30s post-college. And then I moved from that to a different position, which was high school and middle school. And so the church I worked at was in Los Angeles. It was an urban church, so it was like right smack dab in like LA Central, where like 86% of all my kids did not have a dad. Either like dad was gone, or dad just left, or divorced, or died. And so I just had a bunch of young kids who just desperately needed a father figure. And ever since I was like in middle school, I've always wanted to be a dad. It's just like the weirdest. I know it's not for everyone, but I've always wanted to be a dad. And so when I think I was like 20, in my mid-20s, I had all these high school and middle school kids who didn't have a dad. And I was like, I'm not going to replace your dad, but I'll be a male figure who will tell you that I'm proud of you and that I love you, and nothing that you do will make me think less of you. And those three words right there, those three sentences, was like giving water to a dying plant. And it didn't take a lot of effort on my end. I just said it every time I saw them. I always said one of those three things for 7 years. And to see them grow and to see them find self-worth in them, and passion, and all that stuff, like, it's so rewarding. And I, as I continue with my work, like, I am still persuaded that one of the biggest reasons why our world is so messed up is because there are so many men who are boys. And if there is a way for me to stop that and to lift young men to a higher standard with love and grace and compassion and cheering for them and not ever shaming them, then I consider that a win. So yeah, I have a strong passion to build men up. Yeah, it's always been there. Which I think you have the same passion too. So where did that come from?
Which part? Where did?
Training men and encouraging them and equipping them and all that.
I think in general, my theory is that and I mentioned this to Charles, is our passion comes from our own pain. And so it comes from like feeling powerless as a child, watching my parents argue. It comes from feeling as a child, feeling rejected by like my brother and my cousins because they were all older and didn't want to play with me. It came from also kind of creating that illusion in my 20s where I'm just going to do me, like I'm going to pursue what I feel is best for me, and putting kind of relationships second, and coming full circle now where I realize that it's now like, yeah, realize the importance of it and encouraging hopefully next generation to put people first, because probably a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of the mental health issues maybe does come from isolation and all of that.
There's not a lot of good resources for healthy masculinity. And I think that's scary because I think like my understanding of masculinity when I was growing up was through pornography, which is like it's not healthy if that's what I think of. And growing up in Los Angeles where it's Hollywood, TV shows and rap music and all that stuff, like I was never mentored. I was never shown, hey, this is how a man should be. No one really walked into my life, and the men that did were not very helpful either. So there's this toxic masculinity that is very pervasive. And then we talked about this offline, but now we can introduce it too, of just like men are not to be emotional, which is the most devastating stereotype that I think is one of the biggest reasons why this world is so messed up, because men are not able to deal with their emotions because they think it's feminine. When I think one of the most masculine men in the world of all history is Jesus himself, and how much of a feeler he was. So yeah, man, I appreciate. I think you're right. There's a little bit of like our passions are fueled by some wounds that we have, and I hear that for you to change that trajectory for younger men is so admirable, and so I'm grateful for guys like you.
Thank you. It's a journey. It sounds like we're on some similar paths. I also heard from your interview with Krillin that people seem to open up to you and share things that they don't share with others. You kind of have an aura or a way of being that makes you a good listener. I think part of being a good listener is that you care, and people can sense that. So, or at least I can sense that.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. All right. In the interest of time, I try to keep these under an hour, but
we're having so much fun, though.
Yeah. You want to keep going?
I'm down, dude. Whatever. I mean, this is your podcast, so you do you, man.
Yeah, I've been keeping them under an hour but I've noticed that podcasts tend to go longer and longer these days. So like, I'm watching.
Yeah, it just depends on the content and your listeners and their interests and stuff. So. Yeah.
So how long are you planning to be in Taiwan?
Well, we plan on at least 2 years. at least 2 years. We'll see. The way that we got here was kind of crazy because I had no desire to come back to Taiwan. It was actually my wife's idea. And so for all your listeners, like my wife is white. She is white as the wall behind me. We just, full transparency was 9 years ago, Hannah, my wife, was praying and felt like God was telling her that he wants us to leave Los Angeles, move to Dallas for 5 years, and then move to Taiwan for 2 years. So before moving here, we were in Dallas for exactly 5 years. And all the doors started to close. It just seemed like there were some really crazy things that happened that we were so unaware of and out of control, like we didn't have any control, that when the 5 years came up, like it was very obvious that it was time to leave and to get here. So we're here out of kind of faithful obedience to God saying, hey, it's time to go to Taiwan. So now we're here, like, okay, now what? so yeah, here we are. We might stay for 2 years. We might stay longer. Our time in Taiwan has been very sweet and very good.
You didn't grow up here, right? You were born in LA. Grew up in LA.
Yeah, born and raised in Los Angeles. Didn't move to Dallas until 5 years ago.
But did you used to visit occasionally?
Yeah, I mean, I was a typical ABT, right? Like summer break, would come and spend summer here, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to come back, because the summer in Taiwan is just brutal. And then back then, like it was kind of nasty. Like Taiwan was like nasty. It's not as clean as it is now. It's still dirty, but it's not as dirty. So like, and it wasn't my idea to come to Taiwan. Like I just had to come. So then I go back to school and my friends are like, yeah, we did this and we did this. We did it. Like we had all this fun. We played basketball. Like I used to play a lot of basketball too. And I'm like, I got nothing I was just in Taiwan sweating, getting bit by mosquitoes. Yeah. What about you? Where you grew up here?
Yeah, I was born in the States, but I grew up here. Went to TAS, where we played
Oh yeah,
football.
that's right.
And then I I had the opposite route where I then went to the US for in the summers I was rarely here because I was here during the school year.
Yeah.
And then afterwards went to the States and then moved back here also in late September of last year. So it's my first
really? Okay.
summer basketball.
What do you miss most? What do you miss most of from the States?
Other than in and out, I don't miss a whole lot from the States. I mean, cool. I might move back and live there at some point. I'm not sure.
But you're here for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think what I would love to do is maybe like rent an RV and go to more national parks. Because I did a little bit of that, but not a lot of that. I would miss the fact that the US is kind of still the leader in a lot of things. But I think like before I can even say that, I should do better in Taiwan before I can, it's like if you're not even the best in Taiwan, you don't need to talk about going to the States, I guess.
What do you hope to achieve this year? Like, what are your goals, your dreams that you'd like to achieve for this year?
For this
2025
year? 2025? I would love to make sustainable the projects that I'm working on. So outside of coaching basketball, like what I love to do is host events for families, for teams, kind of using activities for connection. There's therapeutic practices that I implement to strengthen those relationships. And but right now it's tough for me to make it like a full-time thing. So working with more people and creating partnerships, kind of like you mentioned, to do something with Charles and the other guy, or something with you or some other people, to basically just activities that foster connection and support, even the men's group type work, where guys can just gather and express themselves authentically and vulnerably. Yeah, it's just been a journey and a little bit of a challenge to get it going.
Yeah,
that would be my main vision.
What's your heart behind these podcasts? Where did it come from?
Yeah, so in terms of these podcasts, it allows me to learn and meet and learn from different types of people. It also I'm also kind of introverted by nature, and so it kind of allows me to connect while still being a little bit introverted. And the idea is that you can have a genuine conversation with someone just by asking good questions. And a big part of asking good questions is just caring and listening. And when you do that, you kind of find the conversational thread. Like I mentioned, I don't have a stack of questions that I have listed out. I have no idea where the conversation is going to go, because I'm pursuing what I feel is interesting and what I'm curious about. And that doesn't really take a lot of social skills. Maybe it does, but like
I think it does.
Yeah, the message that I'm trying to share is that anyone can cultivate meaningful conversations and connections. And an easy way to start is just by asking questions, because then most of it is on the other person to talk a lot. So you don't have to be a super conversationalist, because maybe a lot of people, if they're introverted, they feel shy. They don't feel like they have a lot to offer. They don't feel like they're very interesting. It's like, just be interested rather than try to be so interesting. And asking questions is a great introduction to that. So that's kind of the intention behind the podcast.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, I've enjoyed listening to your podcast, and I'm just excited to see who else you interview.
Yeah. And I'm curious, what is your vision for your time here in Taiwan?
It's very foggy. My vision is very foggy. I mean, one of our biggest goals is to try to fully assimilate into Taiwanese culture. So learning Mandarin is such a high priority. So right now I can speak okay. I can't read or write, but like both of my kids, they go to an American school, but I'm pulling them out because I don't want them to learn English, because their English is fine. So my daughter will be going to a public school, and my son will be going to a school that's only Mandarin speaking. And my wife right now, she's in tutoring class, so she's being tutored in Mandarin. And so that's kind of our vision, was like, okay, in our time here, let's try to fully assimilate into Taiwanese culture by learning the language. So that's number one. Number two, so my wife is a singer, songwriter. She's very talented and gifted as a musician. And so her job back in the States was that she was a contracted singer. So churches would hire her to come and sing at her churches, at different churches. And so we are very invested in like church life, and we want to give back to the community, and we believe in the church. And when people gather, we want to utilize our gifts that we've been given to serve others. And so this round has been like a lot of not doing any of that stuff. And the church that we've been going to, we try to say, hey, we want to serve, we want to help you guys out. And there's a little bit of, it's complicated. There's a lot more hurdles to jump that we're not used to. So I think like my personal dream was like, I want to utilize my gifts to serve the local church here. And so trying to find connections. I have a couple of connections outside of the church that we're currently going to, and to see if that kind of pans out. My sabbatical is ending at the end of this month, so I'm doing some job search. Got an interview at this cram school this Saturday that I'm not too crazy about. So yeah, just going back to like, do I take a job that I'm not crazy about, but the money is okay? Or do I hold out for something that will actually be life-giving and something that I'm excited about? So that's kind of what I'm working through. There's a little bit of a development, which is leadership training for men in their midlife. It's a ministry that I'm a part of back in the States, but we're moving forward to do more like mentorship and something called spiritual direction, which is basically listening to the person and inviting God into the conversation to hear from Him. So there's some movement there that obviously aligns more to my passions and my giftings. But that will probably not be paid. So it's like, do I get a job with money, or do I do something that I really love and not get paid? You know, so that's kind of what I'm balancing through. But yeah, and then my third child will be born this summer. So I'm really excited to meet her. And so part of this year is to discover our new teammate, and to see what kind of just to be there in that joy. In the baby phase once again, which is exhausting but beautiful.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, man.
What would success look like to you in 2 years?
Oh, in 2 years, success would look like looking back and seeing all the ways that God had answered our prayers, where and our biggest prayers have been like, God, like, we just want to be a closer family. So that's one. Success would look like our Mandarin has improved. All of our Mandarin has improved, and that's already a given. Everyone is doing really well. Very, very happy about that. Just staying faithful to whatever God has for us. And so being faithful in the fogginess, when things are not clear, when I wish that there was more direction, and not doing something in haste, and just being faithful with the little that I have. That would be successful for us.
Do you have a favorite quote?
My favorite quote, probably, "You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life." I mean, that's a quote from Dallas Willard. One quote that I think about often is, Isaiah 41:10. Do not be afraid, for I'm with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will help you. I will strengthen you. I will lift you up with my righteous right hand. That's been a lifesaver for me. There are so many times in my life that I don't see any way out, and I'm overcome by anxiety and hopelessness. And that verse has saved my life multiple times. So yeah, that will always be a part of my life. How about you? What's your favorite quote these days?
I was just going to revert back to my favorite quote from high school, which is from John Wooden, UCLA basketball.
Don't let the things, what is it again? Don't let the things that you can't do prevent you from the things that you can do. Is it that one?
No.
Oh,
that's a good one.
I almost quoted that one to you.
That's peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing you did your best to become the best you're capable of becoming. Like
John Wooden was a goat, man.
Yeah.
And he loved Jesus too, which is really cool.
So it's like, yeah, I guess as I deconstruct that, success, it's internally defined. And this kind of links back to what we're talking about, success and failure. And as long as you did your best and you made the best decision based on the information you had, like that's success, and regardless of what externally happens. So when we were talking about failure and people's fear of failure, I think that's maybe a good thing to think about. Yeah. Only the failure just comes from your own expectations or expectations of others, and
you know what I said? I wrote 10 things if I was, in my 20s. One of the things that I wrote is befriend failure. Make failure a friend of yours, because failure is one of the best teachers that you can have.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. So there's a tradition here where the last guest leaves the next one.
I'm prepared. I've been thinking about it. The question
you know the question already? Do you know the question from the last guest?
It's Krilling's question, right?
Yeah.
What would I do for the last month? Yeah. I would do a lot of things. I would move back to Dallas because that's where my community is. I would pull my kids out of school and we would just be together. I would write a couple of letters of apologies to the people who I've hurt. I would write my own eulogy, and because when someone passes away, at least in the American tradition, there's a pastor or there's some sort of religious. So I would actually film myself giving the message. And I would start with, if you're watching this video, it's because I'm dead. I would always just want to leave with that. But just to, just to encourage people of the hope that I have in Jesus. I would go fishing for sure, multiple times. Do that with my son and my daughter. They both love fishing with me. Eat some really good food. In-N-Out would be one of them. Tex-Mex would be multiple ones. But mainly just spend time with my community and my family. That's what I would do. I would have a lot of fun. I would be very sad because it's not easy to raise 3 kids on your own, which is what my wife would have to do. And I would miss a lot of my kids' milestones. But the hope that I have is, as someone who follows Jesus, is death is just a temporary thing, and then comes eternal life with Jesus and the people who I love. So yeah, that's my answer.
Is there anything that's stopping you from writing a letter of apology?
Yeah, my pride.
You don't have to send it to them. You can just write it for yourself.
It's true. It's
Burn
true. I've my therapist actually told me to do that to somebody who hurt me really badly. And there's wisdom to it. I don't think I'm ready for it, because it's still very fresh and there's still grieving to do. So yeah, I've formulated some things in my mind and not written it out, but it still has a lot of venom in it, which tells me that there's still work to do.
Yeah. Well, one practice that I like, just again, you can write it and not send it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you write it, it's a form of catharsis. And maybe
Yes.
the first draft is super venomous.
Yes.
But as you go over it and you edit it, it's a form of healing, I guess, and grieving.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah. No, I'll hear it. I'll take that as confirmation of what I've been told many times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you for that.
Worries. Would you like to leave a question to the next guest?
Sure. This is one of my favorite questions to ask. I have so many questions I want to ask. Can I give you two, and then that person can choose one or the other?
Yeah.
The first question is, what was the biggest lesson you learned about yourself during COVID?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second one I'm stealing from Stephen Covey, from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. What do you want people to say at your funeral? And the question is not, what do you think people would say? It's, what do you want people to say at your funeral?
You could answer either of those?
Yeah. You want me to answer my questions?
Yeah.
Okay. The first question, what did I learn most about in COVID, about myself? Grief is a healer of all emotions. So I really did a lot of grief therapy during COVID. And there was a lot to grieve about, whether it was my past or just what was happening to our world. And so many people who our church buried was a lot. So yeah, there's that. And then what I want people to say, what I want my wife to say about me was that I loved her, that I gave her purpose, and really championed her as an individual, and especially as a singer-songwriter, as a creator, and that I was a good father. I want my daughter to say that I was her best friend. That I showed her what it means to be brave. I showed her what it means to not compromise, and what to look for in a man. I want my son to say, that I always believed in him, and that he is the man who he is now because of me. And that we're best friends. And I taught him how to fish, taught him how to drive stick, taught him what it means to be brave and emotionally intelligent, able to wrestle between power and gentleness. I want my daughter to say that I was gentle and always for her, and but above all, I want people to say that I loved God and I love people well. Yeah.
You feel like you're doing that?
Yeah, I think I'm kicking butt at it, actually. I can always work on it. Not always perfect. Yeah, there are times where I ask my kids, like, do you think daddy is daddy angry? They're like, no, which is very helpful for me because I think that's always in the forefront. I say, is daddy fun? Yeah, it's really fun, which is great. Yeah, so even though I have to be the disciplinarian in our family, like, if they always see me as someone who's fun and caring and loving, that's a win for me.
Have you noticed what situations trigger your anger the most?
When I feel, the term is called flooded. So when I'm flooded, how I get triggered in flooding is when I feel like I'm alone in the responsibilities of running the house. So I'm cooking, I'm cleaning, I'm taking out the trash, I'm doing the laundry, I'm doing the kids' bedtime, I'm doing the kids' morning time, I'm getting the groceries, I'm paying off the bills, I'm, all these things, it's just like I'm feeling so alone. Yeah, that's when I get flooded. And when I don't feel
When you don't feel what? Useful?
in control.
You control.
Yeah.
I noticed what would you call it? Incongruity there. Because you want to be in control, so you control all those things, and then you feel flooded because you're doing everything that allows you to feel in control.
Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, and I think that's what being flooded does, is like you're just so overwhelmed by everything that you lose sight of what's important.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for again, just your passion to ask good questions and listen. Yeah, keep up the good work, man. Any way that I can help you pursue your dreams this summer or this year, let's do it. Let's see what we can do together.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few opportunities for us to partner and create something that hopefully aligns for us both.
Yeah, for sure.
Ministry. I'm gonna keep joking about that. So you tell me it's a bad idea. I just like
no, there's something in the works that I don't want to share too much about, but pickleball, trying to do some sort of pickleball stuff is something for 2026.
Okay.
Yeah.
Postponed.
Postponed for now.
Postponed.
Yeah.
All right.
All
Sounds
right.
good.
Thanks, Willis.
Thank you.
All right. Talk
Take
to you
care.
later.
See ya.